What's up, guys? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly comic book review show. If you like any of these books, I'm going to have links to a few of them down below in the description. That's a good way to help support the channel. Let's go over into Marvel first. No DC books for me, but we have Aliens vs. Captain America, issue number 3. Big, dumb fun in this series, man. So many times when Marvel crosses over with either Predator or Alien, I think it starts pretty strong and then it kind of trails off towards the end. I'm looking at you, Predator kills the Marvel Universe, or whatever it was when he teamed up with Kraven. That story started pretty strong. I like the idea of it, and it fell apart towards the end. We're still in the honeymoon phase with this series, and I'm loving all the exciting little tidbits and little crossover moments between aliens and just like the Red Skull and everything, and Hydra and how they're utilizing the aliens to build an army right now and take out their threats. Really great splash page in this issue showcasing how they're weaponizing the aliens, and we learned a little bit throughout the story how they're able to control them. You'd think that would be impossible to control. They found a way, and they haven't really explained exactly how that works just yet, but they found a way to do it. Steve Rogers and team have to pick up the pieces right now and try to figure out what they're going to do against this like impossible army. And, you know, it's been really exciting to see how they've been able to do all that stuff. There's a great cosmic element that they introduced to here too, so it's not necessarily just Earth-based heroes coming together and taking on this threat. We get to see what the scene has looked like out in space for some time in this version here. So it's a really cool idea. They're blending a lot of interesting things together. They're weaponizing aliens in an interesting way. We'll see if it actually pays off or how exactly they're doing that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm having fun with this series still. The artwork is insane. There's a lot of cool splash moments. There's some things I'm questioning, obviously. It's a crazy premise to begin with, but having a good time with this one. Let me know if you're reading it. Next one, we have a new number 1 from Marvel. I debated reading this one, but I got a copy over at the shop, checked it out. We have Rogue issue number 1. Now, Erica Schultz is on this one. That's a writer that I've seen more and more on top of Marvel books. I don't have a lot of familiarity with the writing style or what to expect, so I jumped in because it's a new number 1. Why wouldn't you? Now, Zagaria is on the art, so not an artist I'm super familiar with. So it's not a creative team I have a lot of, historical knowledge about. But going into the book, I did like what I saw from like an art point of view, but there were some weak moments, especially in like the backgrounds and things. Maybe the coloring had a little bit to do with that. So from a visual presentation point, didn't really nail it for me. Story-wise, we are catching up with Rogue, obviously, what she's doing with some of the newer members of like this team that she's on. Of course, we have Remy in here, but we have Death Dream and some other folks that have been integrated with the team as of late. We get to touch base on all of them and see what's going on. Rogue is really going through this like nightmarish state right now. She's having these dreams, these memories, firsthand experiences that she never had about her old crew back in the day on the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And so she's trying to explore a little bit more of that, tapping into some folks that were around back then and she has a close relationship with. So we're kind of doing a little bit of a level setting here, and we're also trying to unravel this mystery of why she's having all these night terrors and things like that. So, you know, it is somewhat interesting. Who knows if I'll be on it for the long haul. I wanted to try this issue number 1 to see if it was going to grab me from a story and visual perspective. Didn't really do either. I'm interested to know what you guys thought, though. All right, let's go over to Mad Cave next with Speed Racer Tales from the Road issue number 2. These books are great, just world building issues. They're not going to push forward the main plot of Speed Racer and Racer X, but what it will do is give you additional context on those characters, the ancillary characters, some of the family members, and just kind of drives home the emotional impact that like all the different events had. Now in this issue, we have 3 different stories going on, one focusing on Speed Racer's family with like Rex and Speed Racer and the father and the mother and how they grew up and, you know, when the family became a family unit, you know what I mean? And went from that to the tragedy of Rex's death. So we get to explore that a little bit more. There's 2 other stories in here as well that again, build up some other characters that we might further develop down the road. And so again, it builds the overall universe out. It gives us some more context. And I think that's a really cool idea to do. You can only do so much in the proper books with the pages that you have. So it's fun to have these other supplementary issues to give us all of that. All right, let's go over to Dark Horse next with Miss Trudale and the Rise of Man issue number 2. Of course, we have Mike Mignola and Jesse Lonergan on that. Jesse was the catalyst for me jumping on here. Of course, it's Mike Mignola, but I don't know anything about Miss Trudale inside the Hellboy universe. A little bit of research that I've done really suggests that she's a very minor character. There's not a whole lot out there from her, but there was a volume 1 of this series that I did not read, so I got to go back and read that one. But other than that, there's not a whole lot about this character, but correct me down below if I'm wrong. I think the real winner here is just Jesse's artwork and the way that he's able to put together the compositions and just the visual aspect of this story. Again, there's not a whole lot of story here besides Miss Trudale taking on this barbaric form, somehow going back in time and fighting nature itself, or the devil itself inhabiting nature in a certain way, trying to to manipulate the scenes. It very much has like Eve in the Garden of Eden fighting the snake kind of a thing. Like this snake is convincing creatures and convincing things that man will ultimately destroy everything. And so she's trying to combat that. There is some Hellboy synergy here that I'm not grasping. Maybe it's something I can go back and read volume 1 to fully understand, but I'm interested in this universe. I really need to go back and read volume number 1. I thought I was going to do that before issue number 2, but holiday season came and threw me off track. But I am having a great time with this book, at least from a visual point of view. I got to get caught up on the whole story part though. All right, guys, let's talk about Power Fantasy issue number 15. Kieran Gillen on this one. Obviously, Casper Wingard is on it as well. We have one more before our indefinite break. Who knows how long it's going to be before we get issue number 17, but this issue here is really showing us that 16 could be the last issue. There are some major events that happen inside of here. There are the major players that are still on the board finally cracking, and the other players understanding what that means to reality itself if they don't combat that. But if they do combat it, is that essentially the end of the world? We get all those questions asked inside this issue. Again, this is Kieran Gillen playing X-Men in a unrestricted kind of a way. There's so much heavy emotion in here. There's drama. Casper Wingard's art is top-notch inside the book. The way that he's able to portray the quiet moments, the exciting moments, the moments where things are just bubbling over with these characters. And guys, it's a visual treat. It's some of the best work of his career, I think. And Kieran Gillen is really pulling out stops here, guys, and writing just a spectacular like X-Men style book. So if you're not on this book, I highly recommend jumping in. There's a couple trades out for it already. Let's hope for a collected like hardcover deluxe edition. I will be all over that for sure. This is one of the most exciting books on the shelf right now. We have one more issue before a break that's going to last who knows how long. Gives you plenty of time to catch up. Check out Die as well. Go back and read the first 20 issues and jump into Die Loaded. Same kind of thing going on. Same kind of chess match. It's very complicated, but it's fun to explore and enjoy. Power Fantasy is one of the best books on the shelf right now. We got one more issue besides this one to go. Before our break, make sure to catch up. All right, let's talk about Assorted Crisis Events issue number 8. Dennis Camp and Eric Zawadzki on this one. Kind of a difficult book to talk about. I'm going to try to do my best with that. So we are focusing on this time traveler character that's kind of the single point of continuity in all these issues so far. His life is very complex and convoluted, but I think we're experiencing what his time crisis really is. He talks a lot about the comic page itself, how there's a story that's being told in the panels, but the gutters, that white space between all that almost that background part, there's like an infiniteness to that. There's some kind of abstraction there. There's some kind of a way to be lost and dissolved and forgot about or changed or something like that. There's an infiniteness in that spot. And so we're talking a lot about that and how he's progressed through his life and some of the regrets and everything. And the story's not all so obvious. There's a lot of stuff like hidden and buried and missed in the gutters themselves. You know, so of course with that kind of abstraction, we have Eric Zawadzki, one of the best composition guys in comics today, playing a lot around that, especially with like the art tones and just making it crazy, removing the borders and really leaning into that concept in general. And that concept of like just kind of being lost into the void as a result of. So really cool meta idea with like characters and things being more than they seem and being lost in translation and lost in the void. And then Eric does just a great job of visually displaying all that. It is another issue of Ace that's like not really nailing on the head of like what the existential crisis is, the time crisis is, but it's a little bit more straightforward than one of the previous issues where the guy had a bunch of doppelgangers popping in and out. Really interesting book. It takes you 2 or 3 reads to kind of get a sense of what's going on. And hell, you could probably read it 10 or 20 times and not fully understand the message there. All right, next up is Redcoat issue number 16. Of course, we have Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch on this. I love Redcoat. I love the episodic nature of it. I've said this 1,000 times. I love seeing Simon interact with like everybody across time and all these different important events and how he influenced them and how they influenced him as a character as well. Simon's settled down right now. He's got a wife, he's got a kid, he's trying to live this simple life. These ghosts from the past are starting to creep back up into his life, both friends and foes. And so we get to see what that means now in this time, at this point in his life. And we get to see what these characters' true intentions are when they meet with him. Is it one thing or is it another? So it's going to be fun to see some of these past demons and past allies come back in and what the outcome of all that was going to be. Correct me if I'm wrong though, we did get like some kind of a hint that he was going to be, thrown into the future, or maybe he just lives into the future where Geiger is. So I'm going to be excited to see that crossover. We just had the Northerner and Geiger crossover. So I want to get all the toys and throw them together in the same issue. I'm just impatient. I want that. But man, every issue of Redcoat that comes out. I enjoy that issue where we are at the moment. And it's again building into an interesting area. I can't wait to see what's going to happen there. I also want some new villains to show up too and see what's up. But we're not done with one of our classic old foes right now, and we're going to be seeing where it goes from there. Oh man, we had the epic conclusion of Everything Dead and Dying issue number 5. Now, of course, we have Tate Brumble and Jacob Phillips on this. Aesthetically, from a trade dress perspective, a look, a feel, it's a great read. If you like The Walking Dead, it's in the very similar vein. Of course, it is a zombie kind of a story. Has a very unique twist to it, right? This guy is growing up with his family. He has a daughter. A lot of tragedy strikes the town that he's in. He has a lot of memories and friends from this town that he's trying to preserve in their zombie state somehow. We explore all of that. Some outsiders come in, ruin the plan. A very typical Walking Dead kind of a story, but we do get to see a lot more emotion in this book than your typical zombie book. At the end of the day, this story is really about a man just trying to maintain what he has around him. He had a very difficult upbringing. The area that he was in was not very accepting of him and his family. And so this is a guy just grasping onto whatever he can to just regain what he loves. The artwork in here is really great as well. So we get to see these flashback moments or these conversations we think is maybe flashbacks. They might be reinterpretations of what the actual character is witnessing right now, like the illusion that they have at the moment. And we get to see visually as the reader that scene change from like this ideal scene to reality in this slow progression. You don't really notice until it's almost too late. They had this trick in the beginning as well, and it was handled really well inside this book. There's an escalation. There's this pacing that the book has at the very end of this book, towards the end of this book, where the inevitable is coming and you, the reader, feel it coming. And I just love the emotion that stirs up and the conclusion at the end. I think it was just a perfectly written story. It's a masterclass in pacing and just building up tension and everything and release. I cannot wait for more. It does set up for a volume number 2, which I'm excited to explore a little bit more. We don't have as many characters as we did in the first volume here. We're going to be seeing what happens though in a volume number 2. Hopefully it comes out from this team because I love the story. Let me know if you read it. All right, guys, that's what I read this week. Not a huge week, but a great week for comics in general. Let me know what you read down below. While you're down there, if you're interested in these books, you want to help support the channel, check out the links I have down below. But as always, guys, like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be alerted whenever I put out new videos. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the comments.